The fat widow's Christmas basket got 0 bids. The rancher saw her worth and paid triple. Hannah Whitmore, you're buying ribbon for the Christmas auction? Really? Hannah's hands stilled on the spool of red satin. Mrs. Cooper's voice carried across the general store like a church bell, loud enough for the 3 other women browsing fabric to hear every word. Yes, ma'am. Hannah kept her voice steady, though her face burned. The auction's tonight. Mrs. Cooper's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Oh, I suppose everyone's entitled to try. Even when, she paused, eyes sweeping Hannah's figure with theatrical concern. Even when the outcome's already clear. The other women tittered. Hannah paid for her ribbon with shaking hands and walked out into the December cold. She'd made it halfway down Main Street when she heard the cry. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, stood frozen on the boardwalk, staring at the Christmas ribbons scattered in the mud where she'd dropped them. Her mother was already 10 paces ahead, voice sharp with impatience. Clara, pick those up this instant. Do you know what those cost? Hannah knelt, not easy, never easy, and gathered the ribbons one by one. She wiped the mud carefully on her skirt and pressed them into the girl's small hands. There you are, sweetheart. Good as new. Clara's eyes went wide. Thank you, ma'am. Her mother barely glanced back, just grabbed Clara's hand and pulled her away without a word. Hannah stood slowly, knees aching, and continued home. She didn't make it far before she heard them. 3 young cowboys lounged outside the Silver Spur Saloon, whiskey brave and bored. The tallest one called out as she passed. Hey, Mrs. Whitmore. Heard you're making a basket for tonight. Hannah kept walking. Don't waste your time. Another one laughed. Ain't nobody bidding on that. Their laughter followed her all the way to the edge of town. Her cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, small and tidy in the way things become when they're all you have left. Hannah closed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. She made it to the table before the tears came. They weren't loud. She'd learned not to cry loudly 2 years ago, when Thomas died and the world decided she no longer mattered. But the question burned in her chest like hot coals. Why did you make me this way, God? Why so much suffering? She touched the wedding ring she still wore, though Thomas's side of the bed had been cold for 24 months. He'd called her beautiful. He'd meant it. She'd believed him because when he looked at her, his eyes had been full of something she couldn't fake, something real and warm in hers. Now she was just the fat widow. The joke. The woman the town pitted on Sundays and forgot by Monday. Hannah wiped her face with rough hands and stood. The basket supplies sat on the counter. Flour, butter, the precious jar of molasses she'd saved for 3 months. Thomas's gingerbread recipe, written in his careful hand on a card she'd memorized but couldn't bear to put away. One more time, she thought. I'll try one more time. Her hands moved with fierce purpose. Kneading dough until her arms ached. Rolling biscuits until they were perfect. Frying chicken until the skin crackled gold. She worked through the afternoon and into the evening, pouring every ounce of stubborn hope she had left into that basket. If they wouldn't see her worth, maybe they'd taste it. By the time she finished, the sun had set. She wrapped everything carefully in the red cloth, tied the ribbon she'd bought into a careful bow, and stood back. It was beautiful. The best work she'd ever done. It wouldn't matter. She knew it wouldn't matter. But she'd made it anyway because some part of her, stupid, stubborn, still breathing, refused to disappear completely. Hannah put on her Sunday dress. It was worn at the elbows and had been let out twice, but it was clean and pressed. She looked at herself in the cracked mirror by the door. You look ridiculous. A fat widow playing dress-up. She almost put the basket down. Almost stayed home. Instead, she picked it up, heavy with hours of work, and walked out into the December night. The town hall blazed with lamplight and laughter. Hannah could hear the music before she even reached the door. Fiddles and voices raised in celebration. She paused at the threshold. Inside, the other women clustered together like birds on a wire, young and lovely, their baskets decorated with flowers and lace. They laughed easily, heads bent together, sharing secrets Hannah would never be invited to hear. She stood at the edge of the room, alone with her basket. Nobody looked at her. Nobody spoke. The auction would start soon. The humiliation would follow. But Hannah Whitmore stayed anyway, because leaving would have been the same as agreeing with every cruel thing they'd ever said about her. And she wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the town hall, jovial and commanding. Next basket, Miss Sarah Mitchell's. Beautiful work here, folks. Let's start at $3. Hands shot up. The bidding climbed fast. $5, $7, $9. A young rancher won at $12 and Sarah practically floated to his side, blushing and perfect. Hannah watched from her corner. Her basket sat at her feet, growing heavier with every passing minute. 4 more baskets sold. Each one brought laughter, applause, the sweet victory of being chosen. The room hummed with warmth and Christmas cheer and the kind of belonging Hannah had forgotten existed. Then the auctioneer lifted her basket. The room didn't go quiet, that would have been mercy. Instead, the conversations continued as if he hadn't spoken at all. Mrs. Hannah Whitmore's basket. He held it high, and Hannah saw him notice its weight, the careful presentation. Something like pity crossed his face. Fine work here. Let's start it, shall we say $2? Silence. Not the expectant kind. The uncomfortable kind. Mrs. Cooper's voice carried from the front row, pitched just loud enough. Probably weighs as much as she does. Laughter rippled. Not loud. Just enough. The auctioneer cleared his throat. $1 then? More silence. Men studied their boots. Women whispered behind gloved hands. A cowboy near the back muttered to his friend, "I'd have to eat dinner with her." "No thanks." His friend snickered. Hannah's face burned. Her hands clenched at her sides. She'd known. She'd known this would happen. But knowing hadn't prepared her for how it felt, like being slowly erased in front of 50 people who didn't care enough to look away. The auctioneer shifted his weight. "Well, perhaps we'll just move on to $30. The room stopped. Every head turned. A man stood at the back of the hall, half hidden in shadow near the door. Tall, taller than anyone else in the room. Broad-shouldered, weathered face, maybe 40. Serious gray eyes that swept the crowd with the kind of calm that came from never needing to prove anything. Hannah's breath caught. The man from the road. 3 months ago. Late September. She'd been gathering firewood when she'd heard the horse scream. Found him on the ground near her property line, dazed and bleeding from a gash on his temple where he'd hit a rock. His horse had spooked at a rattlesnake and thrown him hard. She'd helped him stand, not easy for either of them, and guided him inside. Fed him soup and bread while he recovered. He'd thanked her quietly, paid her more than the meal was worth, and ridden away. She'd never expected to see him again. And now he was here, bidding $30 on her basket. The auctioneer stammered. "That's, Mr. Brennan, that's 3 times tonight's highest bid. Are you certain?" "I'm certain." Cole Brennan's voice was quiet, but it carried. He walked forward slowly, deliberately, boots heavy on the wooden floor. "Mrs. Whitmore made that basket. I can tell by the care in it." He reached the front, pulled cash from his pocket, and counted it out. More money than most families in town made in 2 months. Mrs. Cooper found her voice first. "Mr. Brennan, surely you didn't see whose basket?" "I saw exactly whose it was." Cole's eyes met Hannah's across the room. $30. That's my bid. He picked up the basket, then did something that made Hannah's heart stop. He offered her his arm like she was a lady at a governor's ball. "Mrs. Whitmore, would you share this meal with me?" Hannah couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only nod. The room watched in stunned silence as they sat together at a corner table away from the others. Cole unpacked the basket with careful hands. He lifted the cloth and went still. This is... He looked at her. How long did this take you? Most of yesterday. All of today. He tasted the gingerbread and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something fierce and honest burned there. This is the best food I've had in 10 years. Maybe longer. Hannah's voice came out barely above a whisper. You didn't have to do that. It was charity. No, ma'am. Cole's voice was firm. This food is worth every penny. He paused. And so are you. Tears pricked Hannah's eyes. She blinked them back. You're the man from the road. September. The horse threw you. You remember. Why did you? She couldn't finish. You helped me when you didn't have to. Fed me when you didn't have much to spare. He met her eyes steadily. I don't forget kindness, Mrs. Whitmore. And I don't forget when someone treats me like a human being instead of a bank account. They ate in silence for a moment. Around them, the party continued, but quieter now. Watchful. Cole set down his fork. May I call on you? Properly? Hannah's heart hammered. Why? Because I'd like to know you better. Because you're the first person in this town who didn't look at me and see dollar signs. He smiled, small, almost shy. And because anyone who can make gingerbread this good deserves to be appreciated. Hannah's hands trembled. Yes. You may call on me. Cole's smile widened. Good. They finished the meal. When it ended, Cole stood and offered his hand. Thank you for a wonderful Christmas Eve, Mrs. Whitmore. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. He tipped his hat and left. Hannah sat alone at the table, surrounded by empty plates and the lingering scent of gingerbread. For the first time in 2 years, she felt something she'd thought was dead. Hope. Christmas morning came cold and bright. Hannah was kneading bread dough when the knock sounded. She opened the door to find Cole Brennan standing there, hat in his hands, looking oddly uncertain for a man who'd just spent $30 in front of half the town. Wanted to thank you again for that meal. He shifted his weight. Been thinking about it all morning. Best Christmas dinner I've had in 10 years. Hannah felt heat creep up her neck. Oh, you're welcome. I was wondering. He met her eyes. Would you be willing to make dinner for me again? I'll pay for the groceries and your time. Truth is, I'm tired of my own poor cooking. Hannah stared. You want to hire me? If you're willing. She should say no. The town was already whispering. This would make it worse. Yes, she heard herself say. I'd be glad to. Cole's smile was like sunrise. I'll bring supplies tomorrow. 2 days later, he appeared at her door with a crate of groceries and an unusual request. I was hoping you'd teach me to make bread. Never could get it right on my own. They worked side by side in her small kitchen. Cole's hands were too rough, too strong, meant for ropes and reins, not dough. You're strangling it, Hannah said, watching him knead with grim determination. Gentle. Like this. She demonstrated. Cole tried again. The dough tore. Hannah bit her lip, but the laugh escaped anyway. Cole looked up, startled. What? You're? She tried to stop, couldn't. You're kneading bread like you're wrestling a steer. He looked at his hands, at the mangled dough, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Hannah laughed harder, the first real laugh in so long it almost hurt. Years of grief cracking open. She covered her mouth, but it kept coming, helpless and bright. Cole started chuckling. The sound was rusty, like he'd forgotten how. I'm sorry, Hannah gasped, wiping her eyes. Don't apologize. Cole was grinning now, and it transformed his serious face into something younger, lighter. At least I'm entertaining. Very. They laughed together until Hannah's sides ached and Cole's eyes watered. When they finally caught their breath, the kitchen felt different. Warmer. like something had shifted and settled into place. While the bread rose, they sat with coffee. My mother died when I was 12, Cole said quietly. Had to learn to cook and clean and manage a house. Did a poor job of all three. He stared into his cup. But I survived. Then Sarah died 15 years ago, my wife, and I've been surviving ever since. Just surviving. Not living. Hannah wrapped her hands around her own cup. What happened to her? Childbirth. The baby too. His voice went flat. I buried them both on a Tuesday. I'm sorry. Cole nodded. What about you? What do you do besides make miracles in the kitchen? Sewing mostly. Mending for people in town. She paused. It's quiet work. You like quiet? Hannah surprised herself. I used to like noise. Laughter. Thomas and I, we laughed every day. I used to be lively. Made him laugh until he couldn't breathe. Her voice caught. But since he died, I just forgot how. You made me laugh today, Cole said. It's still in you. 3 days later, he came back with firewood. Hannah tried to protest, but he just stacked it neatly by her stove and refused payment. They didn't cook that day. Just talked. He asked about her sewing, her garden, what she'd been like as a girl. He listened like her answers mattered, asked follow-up questions, remembered details. Hannah found herself telling him things she hadn't said aloud in years. A week after Christmas, he visited again. No pretense this time, no bread to make, no firewood to stack. He just wanted to sit in her kitchen and talk. They did for 3 hours. When he left, Hannah stood at her window and watched him ride away. I'm falling for him, she realized with a jolt of terror. God help me, I'm falling for him. The town was watching. She knew they were watching. This would end badly. Men like Cole Brennan didn't end up with women like Hannah Whitmore. But when he knocked on her door 2 days later, she opened it anyway. Because for the first time since Thomas died, Hannah felt alive. And she wasn't ready to give that up. Not yet. Hannah was pulling bread from the oven when the pounding started. She turned to find 3 women pushing past her into the house without invitation. Mrs. Cooper, the banker's wife, and Mayor Thornton's sister. Their faces were pinched with righteous fury. They stopped dead. Cole Brennan stood at her kitchen table, sleeves rolled to his elbows, flour dusting his forearms. He'd been kneading dough. The silence stretched thin and dangerous. Mrs. Cooper recovered first, voice shrill. Mr. Brennan, you're alone with her. Unchaperoned. I'm learning to make bread, Mrs. Cooper. Cole wiped his hands calmly on a towel. Is that a crime? It's indecent. The banker's wife clutched her reticule like a shield. The two of you, repeatedly, without proper supervision. Cole's voice dropped, quiet, but with edges. Are you questioning Mrs. Whitmore's honor? Or mine? The women hesitated. Because if you are, Cole continued, taking a deliberate step forward, say it clearly. So I know who to speak to the sheriff about. Slander's a serious charge. Mrs. Cooper backpedaled. We're simply concerned for propriety. You're concerned with gossip. Cole's eyes were steel. There's a difference. Mrs. Whitmore is a respectable widow. I am a respectable man. We're courting. If that offends you, the door's behind you. The whole town is talking. Then the whole town can mind its own business. Cole opened the door and stood beside it. Good day, ladies. They left in a rustle of scandalized skirts. When the door closed, Hannah realized she was shaking. They'll make this worse, she whispered. Cole turned to her. Let them. I meant what I said. But Hannah knew better. She'd seen how this worked. 1 week later, Sheriff Morrison knocked on her door with his hat in his hands and regret in his eyes. Mrs. Whitmore. Town council sent me. He handed her an official-looking paper. They've issued a notice of exile. Moral disruption to community standards. You're ordered to vacate town limits by Friday. Hannah's world tilted. They're exiling me? Council vote was unanimous. Mayor, banker, Mrs. Cooper's husband. The sheriff looked genuinely sorry. It's legal. I'm sorry. He left. Hannah stood in her doorway, staring at the paper until the words blurred. That evening, she was packing her few belongings when Cole burst through the door without knocking, wild-eyed and breathing hard. Is it true? Hannah couldn't look at him. They want me gone by Friday. This is because of me. This is because they hate me. Her voice broke. You were just the excuse they needed. Where will you go? Boarding house. 2 towns over. I'll find work. Come to my ranch. That would make everything worse. I don't care. Cole's voice rose for the first time. Hannah, I don't care what they think. Well, I do. She whirled on him, tears streaming. I won't be the reason you lose everything. Your business, your standing, your... What good is any of it without you? The words hung in the air. Hannah stared at him. Cole's chest heaved. Then, slowly, deliberately, he dropped to one knee on her worn wooden floor. Hannah Whitmore. His voice shook. I love you. I've loved you since you helped me on that road and asked for nothing in return. I've loved you through every meal we've cooked, every laugh we've shared, every story, every silence. Marry me. Not because they're forcing us. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Hannah's hands covered her mouth. Cole. They want you gone by Friday? His eyes blazed. Then marry me Friday morning. Become my wife. Walk out of this town as Mrs. Brennan, not as someone they exiled. Show them they have no power over you, over us. They'll never accept. I don't need them to accept anything. I just need you to say yes. He took her hand. Do you love me? The word came out broken. Yes. Then marry me. Let them choke on their bitterness while we build something beautiful. Hannah pulled him to his feet and kissed him, desperate and salt-tasted and full of furious hope. Yes, she whispered against his mouth. Yes, I'll marry you. Cole held her like she was precious, like she was worth fighting for. Friday morning, he said. I'll arrange everything. The Reverend, witnesses. You just show up. Where will we live? My ranch. You're home now. Hannah laughed through tears. Friday. Outside, the town slept, unaware that their exile order had just become a wedding invitation. Friday morning arrived with frost on the windows and steel in Hannah's spine. She stood in the church vestibule wearing a cream dress she'd sewn in 3 sleepless nights. Simple but beautiful. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small bouquet of winter greenery. Inside, the church was half empty. The Reverend waited at the altar, kind-faced and certain. His wife sat in the front pew. A handful of ranch families she'd never met filled scattered seats, Cole's friends, come to stand witness. The rest of the town had stayed away. Cole stood at the altar in a pressed suit, watching the door like she might disappear. Hannah took a breath and stepped forward. The church doors banged open behind her. Mayor Thornton strode in, flanked by banker Fairfield and Mrs. Cooper's husband. Their faces were red with cold and anger. This wedding cannot proceed. The Reverend stiffened. On what grounds? This woman is under exile order. The mayor's voice echoed. She has no legal right to be in town limits. Cole walked down the aisle slowly. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. She's not under exile. In 10 minutes, she'll be my wife. Mrs. Brennan will live on my ranch, 5 miles outside your precious town limits. Banker Fairfield stepped forward. Mr. Brennan, think carefully. The bank holds your mortgages. Your business relationships. Pull them. Cole didn't blink. I'll find other banks. Other business partners. Other friends. You'll be ruined. I'll be married to the woman I love. Cole's voice hardened. There's a difference. Mrs. Cooper appeared behind the men, face pinched. Mr. Brennan, you're throwing away your reputation for. Careful. The word cut like a blade. She stopped. Cole turned to address the church, the half-full pews, the council members blocking the aisle, Hannah standing frozen in her wedding dress. You measured Hannah by her size. Her poverty. Her status as a widow. His voice rang clear. You found her wanting. Unworthy. You mocked her. Exiled her. Tried to erase her. He walked back to Hannah and took her hand. I measured her by her character. Her kindness. Her strength. The way she helped a stranger on the road and asked for nothing back. The way she makes me laugh after 15 years of forgetting how. His voice softened, but lost none of its strength. And I found her priceless. He turned back to the council. You tried to exile the best woman in this territory. That's your loss, not mine. Now get out of this church, or stay and witness. But you will not stop this wedding. The mayor's face went purple. The bank means nothing compared to her. Cole's eyes were chips of flint. Make your choice. Stay or go. But we're getting married either way. Silence stretched. Then Mayor Thornton turned on his heel and walked out. The banker followed. Mrs. Cooper hesitated, then left with a hiss of skirts. The doors slammed. Half a dozen townspeople who'd been hovering outside, curious, uncertain, slipped inside and took seats. Not many, but enough. Cole squeezed Hannah's hand. Ready? She nodded, throat too tight for words. They walked down the aisle together. The ceremony was simple, beautiful. The Reverend's voice was warm and certain. Cole's vows made Hannah cry. I vow to see you as God sees you, precious, valuable, worthy. I vow to defend you, cherish you, and remind you daily that you are enough. More than enough. Hannah's voice shook. I vow to love you with courage. To choose love over fear. To build something beautiful despite the opposition. She smiled through tears. To make you laugh every single day. You may kiss your bride. Cole kissed her like she was air and he was drowning. The church erupted in genuine applause. 1 year later, Hannah walked into the Christmas Eve celebration on Cole's arm, 6 months pregnant and glowing. She wore a beautiful green dress Cole had commissioned from the dressmaker in the capital, the one who didn't know her history and simply measured her as she was. The town had softened. Not all of it. Mrs. Cooper still looked away when Hannah passed. But others nodded. Some even smiled. Hannah had stopped needing their approval months ago. The basket auction began. When Hannah's basket was called, elaborate as ever, filled with the gingerbread that had become legendary, Cole stood immediately. $50. The room erupted in warm laughter. Hannah called out, Cole Brennan, you can have my cooking free. I know. He grinned. But this is charity. And I'm establishing tradition. Every year, I bid on my wife's basket. Let's see who can top that devotion. More laughter. Genuine. They shared the meal while Cole's hand rested on her belly and their baby kicked against his palm. Best $50 I'll spend all year, he murmured. Hannah kissed him. You didn't buy a basket, Cole Brennan. You bought yourself a lifetime of gingerbread and a woman who'll never let you eat cold suppers. No. His eyes were serious now. I invested in something better. A home. A partner. A future. Around them, the town celebrated. Some still judged. Many had softened. A few had become true friends. But Hannah didn't need them all anymore. She had Cole. She had their baby coming. She had a home filled with laughter and flower dust and the smell of bread rising. She had her worth. And finally, she believed it.